From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Bill Gates is just all over the news media these days because he's got a new book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, the Solutions We Have and the Breakthroughs We Need. Now, I'm not just going to get all snarky about him. He's the richest guy on the planet, or at least he was a couple days ago. I'm not sure. He and Elon Musk are toggling back and forth. One is the richest one day, and then the other is the richest the next day. Anyway, so he's a rich guy. And he and Melinda have the foundation, of course, and they tackle very big issues, global poverty, and of course they studied and contributed billions to the COVID issue. And so people go to him as some expert. And I'm going to concede right now, he knows way more about any of this than I do. I'm not going to pretend that I know more about this than he does. I concede that. But what I don't concede is that he's going to make one lick of difference. I mean, you know me. I never get personal. I just assume that everybody's doing their best. And I assume that about Bill Gates. I assume he's 100% sincere about everything he says. I believe he's doing his very best, that he really believes that the ideas he puts forward are presented with sincerity and the opinion that it really is our best course of action. Why would I doubt him? I don't. And even if I did, what good would it do? But if you've seen or read any of his interviews on his latest little book tour, he still is entirely steeped in world, global, corporate capitalism. He never questions it for a second. And he talks about things like tax credits, which just... My mother used to yell at the television. I find myself getting very close. I haven't done it yet. But one day, it's just going to be inevitable. I'm going to become my mother, and I'm going to start yelling at the television. I mean, this is just laughable. Still talking about competition as a means to an end here? That competition will somehow get us where we need to go? To me, this is just laughable or cryable. It's too sad to be laughable. A little side note here. When we had the Orange Menace to contend with, it gave us a real sort of tangible emergency situation that we all had to deal with. It was kind of easy to think about. It was easy to frame, easy to articulate. And we all automatically engaged in the whole fight or flight phenomenon with this clear and present danger, inflicting pain and threatening worse. Every single day, every single morning we got up, we had to deal with this. And so now that he's gone, and yeah, we still have to worry about his thrusting his hand up out of the grave like Kerry. He's speaking at CPAC this weekend. That should be interesting. So yeah, there's that story. But generally speaking, we don't get up every day obsessing about this horrible menace that really did, without exaggeration, endanger our lives. There's no getting around it. So we successfully exorcised that demon for the time being, and that allows us to put our attention back on the very important things like, the really big ones, climate crisis and the pandemic. And I got to tell you, it's not easy. For me anyway, I don't know how you're handling it. For me, it's damned emotional. It was easier to get all hyped up and angry about the Orange Menace, to put up our dukes and fight. But now we have to wrestle with much more complex issues. And we have to do it in a thoughtful, deliberate way. It's not just getting in the ring and throwing rhetorical jabs. It's not just wailing away at a very personal opponent who wants to hurt you. No, now this is existential stuff. The pandemic and climate crisis require deep and deliberative thinking. They require grand solutions, and the solutions themselves require creativity, fundamental change in how the world operates. And most difficult of all, getting everybody on the same page. We have to cooperate. So it's all a little overwhelming. When you're in a pitched battle, as we were with the Orange Menace, there's no time to think. There's no time to reflect. You just fight. Every day you just get up and fight. This is so different. It's not fighting in a ring. It's more like climbing a wall. It's more like the last late night cramming for finals. This is just hard damn work. And you know, I'll give Bill Gates some credit. He seems to understand that. By the way, I should mention I have not read the book. Okay, so full confession here. I'm just going on press accounts right now. Speaking of press accounts, I'll tell you I'm reading right now, let's see, CNBC.com. And they're covering his 60 Minutes appearance on CBS on Sunday. If humanity can successfully mitigate climate change, quote, it'll be the most amazing thing mankind has ever done. We agree. It'll take an all-out effort, like a world war, but it's us against greenhouse gases. I also agree. This is a quote again from 60 Minutes. Gates is relentlessly optimistic. These are days when it looks very hard. If people think it's easy, they're wrong. If people think it's impossible, they're wrong, he said. It can seem overwhelming. Yes, we're in agreement. Bill Gates and I are in agreement. But here's where Bill and I part ways. Again, the title of his book, he's literally written a how-to book. How to Avoid a Climate Disaster is the title. Tries to convince us that we're not powerless. We have power as citizens. I would like to agree with that. He encourages us to get political, to write letters, make phone calls to our representatives. Who's going to argue with that? But the problem is we don't live in a democracy. And his little how-to book doesn't cover that. You and I talk all the time about issues that get 70, 80, 90% approval ratings and go nowhere in Congress. The big ones being gun safety laws and Medicare for all. Both of them are through the roof on approval. And both of them are just a dream at this point. And again, you and I have talked at length about the fact that we're not a democracy because of the makeup of the Senate, because of gerrymandering, because of cheating. The Republican Party right now, in virtually every red state, they're writing bills trying to pass laws to make voting harder, more difficult. One of them wants the legislature to supersede the votes of the electorate, of the citizens. Was it, I forget, I don't want to say, Alabama, Arkansas? It was one of them. Yeah, a proposed bill that would allow that state legislature to award their electoral votes to whoever they decide, regardless of the outcome of the election. We just finished a census, as we do every 10 years. So now it's time for redistricting, and the same old game is afoot to further cement and institutionalize minority rule, to fix it, to rig the game. So Bill Gates, in all of his innovative wisdom, his first piece of advice is to write letters and make phone calls. To who? To these guys? To the oligarchs? To the plutocrats? To the schemers? What else you got, Bill? Oh, here we go. Love this. Use your spending power. Buy and use sustainable products, like a smart thermostat, for example, which will help regulate your energy consumption. Vote with your wallet. Now, there are a couple of things wrong with this. First of all, given the makeup of the American psyche, it's just an impossible ask. Yeah, you might get a certain fraction of people, of Americans, to buy into this idea. But to actually think you could get the numbers up to a point that would make the slightest bit of difference, when a third of the nation won't even accept the fact that there is a climate crisis, and another third of the nation are completely unaware of what's going on. Even the so-called liberals, you really think you're going to find enough people to reduce their own personal carbon footprints to make any measurable difference? Come on, Bill. Keep trying here. Demand more from your workplace. There's the next tip. Again, this is just a joke. Yeah, I have so much sway down at my workplace. I have so much power. We can't buy our way out of this. We can't consume our way out of this. We can't make good decisions. We can't vote with our wallets. And when you get down to your workplace, you're nothing. You're a peon. You don't have any power. You have zero power at your workplace. And there's a perfect area to talk about what we really do need. Because you know what, Bill, I have some ideas too on how we can fight the climate crisis. We have to destroy the Republican Party. We have to take a hard left politically. We have to fight for democracy. We have to demand democracy, which means every single one of us needs to channel our inner Stacey Abrams. We got to run for office. We got to fight. And using your spending power, Bill Gates is operating from a set of fundamental beliefs, premises, that he doesn't even think to question. The very idea that the way we spend our money is going to somehow profoundly impact the nation's policies regarding climate crisis, well, that just gives all the power, I should say, it maintains all the power in money itself. It upholds the inequality, the injustice of income disparities. Putting money at the center of these strategies is not just an inadequate solution. It literally upholds and maintains the very root of the problem. And that is that money holds power. And therefore, those with money have the power. And as long as that is the social and economic dynamic in this country and in this world, the climate crisis will continue to bury us. And now you want us to demand more from our workplace? The only way the climate crisis will be addressed is if we entirely transform the very nature of work. Just like we have to transform the nature of money and how it rules our lives, we have to transform the nature of work. Private ownership of capital, the relationship between management, bosses, workers. Unless and until we have full-blown socialism, that is the workers owning the means of production, or at the very least, strong, powerful unions helping to make the rules. We got to go full-blown, not just workers' rights, but worker control over what is produced and how it's produced. As long as the power gap which currently exists between owners and workers, as long as that exists, there is no prayer for climate crisis solutions. This is just a fantasy, Bill. Oh, here's another helpful tip. Talk to your family and friends. Gates urges everyone to talk to their friends, family members, and colleagues about the importance of climate change mitigation efforts. Yeah, let's just sit around our big old houses with 2-acre lots and just have conversations over wine with our friends and family. Maybe we could take a nice trip to Cancun. Take some friends and family with us so we could sit around the pool and have these really important conversations. Come on, Bill. But keep in mind that many climate change conversations have become polarized, and that's counterproductive. My hope is that we can shift the conversation by sharing the facts with the people in our lives, our family members, friends, and leaders. I also hope we can unite behind plans that bridge political divides. You want to bridge political divides? Really? Really? In our current political atmosphere, you want to bridge divides. So you're okay. You're okay with a Republican Party that's gone completely off the deep end. They deny climate crisis. They promote tyranny. They are anti-democratic. And you want to sort of both sides this thing? You want to bridge a divide between... No, there's no bridging divides. We have to win politically. We have to go hard left We have to go hard socialist, and we have to win. I'm telling you, if we don't go hard socialist, we're doomed. That's just it. If we go soft on this, if we go middle of the road, well, if we go right, if we continue to drift right politically, as we have for the last 40 plus years, well, then it's game over. It's just over. And maybe somehow with Joe Biden, maybe we can make a little progress, a little bit back towards center. Politically, you think those people are going to make the difference with climate? No. We have to transform our politics. We have to transform the workplace. We have to transform the way we consume. We need a 180. We need a complete 180 from the direction we're going. I don't know Bill Gates. He might be the nicest guy in the world, but he's dead wrong. He is 100% wrong. The only way we save this planet, the only way we save our hides, the only way we avoid a climate dystopia is by rejecting the status quo and the drift to the right that got us here. We have to reject consumerism. We have to redefine work. We have to completely eliminate private capital ownership. After a struggle that's been here as long as humans have been drawing breath, the struggle for power has to be won by the masses. There's only two ways this thing can go down. That power struggle that's been going on for millennia has to be won by us. If not, we're looking at a doomsday scenario. Mass extinctions, great swaths of the globe becoming uninhabitable due to cold or heat, 100-year storms, 1,000-year storms becoming annual events. There's just no turning back from this without questioning the underlying struggle for power. That's our only option now. That's our only option. It's really come down to that. For humans on this planet, it's either power or extinction. Man, 500,000 deaths. Did my share of crying last night. President Joe did what he does. And of course, he addressed the nation. He empathized. He sympathized. He gave America a big old hug. You can love him or hate him on his politics, but there's no other president probably in American history who is more suited for that part of the job. And that is a big part of a president's job. You have to be able to communicate with the nation, especially when it's really hard. And he seems to be just born for this. And of course, we all know his life circumstances, losing his first wife and his daughter many years ago, and then losing his adult son. And he's a guy who just wears it on his sleeve, and he feels every emotion, and every bit of it is sincere and true. So you got to love the guy for that. And it was very appropriate to address the nation, to have a moment of silence. So this is just so sad. And it's not over. You know, people are excited because the numbers are coming down every day, the number of cases, number of deaths. But, you know, that's from an astronomically high peak when we were topping 4,000 deaths a day. And we've cut that in half, which is good, but it's still damn near 2,000 people a day dying. We are nowhere near the end of this thing. Of course, we need to stop and acknowledge, grieve the dead. But this is like grieving for your buddy on the battlefield while the battle continues. We don't have the luxury or the freedom to mourn in any recognizable respect here, because we are still smack dab in the middle of this thing. And if we forget that, it's just going to get worse. It might get worse as it is. We don't actually know. The scientific community, the researchers are telling us as quickly as they can as they learn about these vaccines. And what we do know is encouraging. The likelihood of becoming seriously ill or dying after a vaccine is very, very low. And that's the great news. But they don't really know for sure, and they're telling us this. They're being upfront. They need more time to understand how the vaccine will impact your ability to contract and to carry, and most importantly, to pass it on to others. So if anybody thinks it's time to just get comfortable, that is totally on you. The experts are not telling us that. We have to stay masked. We have to keep our social distance. We have to avoid gatherings. We are still on the battlefield while we mourn the ones we've lost. We are still on that battlefield. The number, my God, the number, 500,000. Do you remember not that long ago when they were saying, oh, this could reach up to 60,000, and we would just gasp. Maybe even 100,000. We just couldn't even believe that. And now we're at 500,000. Almost guaranteed, certainly, to go to 600,000. There's just no doubt about that at all. It's just a matter of how quickly we get there. As the headlines are pointing out, 500,000 tops World War II, Vietnam, and Korea combined. Of course, our numbers continue to top the world. They have all throughout this whole ordeal. Highest reported deaths in the world. 20% of the nearly 2.5 million deaths worldwide were 20%. With, what is it, about 4% of the world's population? Yeah, the richest nation on earth, the most powerful nation on earth. According to every candidate for national office, the greatest country on earth. So, we've seen better days. We've seen better days. Oh, speaking of the vaccine, just a little reminder, if, I don't know who's listening. President Joe, are you listening? Anybody with some power listening right now? There's something awfully important needs to be done, and that is that we need to have a global perspective on this. The vaccine has to go worldwide. So far, rich nations are getting it, poor nations aren't. More than half of all vaccines so far gone to the wealthier nations. Looking right now at an article from the New Yorker. Many of the world's poorest countries may be unable to vaccinate more than a fifth of their populations by the end of this year. We're just getting started. That's 11 months away, 10 months away. Talking about a new study about the potentially disastrous consequences, emphasizing both economic and moral imperatives for increasing worldwide access to COVID-19 vaccines. This study found that unequal vaccine access among countries will likely lead to a total cost for the world between $1.8 trillion and $3.8 trillion, with up to half the losses paid for by wealthier nations. In contrast, the cost of vaccinating one-fifth of the world's vulnerable population, as the World Health Organization's COVAX initiative aims to do, would cost less than $40 billion, with expenses decreasing over time. So this study points out that it's just in our economic self-interest to make sure the people of poor nations get vaccinated. I always kind of bristle at this sort of argument, but I guess you have to make it. It's kind of hard to convince people to do things just because it's the right thing to do. The fact that rich people or rich nations should have an advantage over poor people and poor nations is just flatly immoral under any moral code. But it's hard to make that argument. People don't want to hear that argument. It's the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. Doesn't hold much sway. You got to tell people how it's going to affect their pocketbooks. All right, so be it. In the long run, it's going to cost us money. And, talking about self-interest, it just puts us at greater risk for a return visit with how many different variants we don't know. So we absolutely, for moral reasons, for health reasons, for economic reasons, we have to think globally about this. All right. That's the log for today. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.